Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Spincast. Today, we are back on the topic of collegiate esports. Today, we have Raymond Lee. He is the CSGO and Valorant director of the Esports Club at the University of California in Santa Cruz. So, without further ado, Raymond, go ahead, give us a little bit of background of yourself. Tell us where your passions started in the esports world and how that took you all the way to your current role at UC Santa Cruz.
Yeah, so just like Kyle said, my name is Raymond Lee. I am the current CSGO director as well as the Valorant director at UC Santa Cruz. So basically, when I was about maybe 14, 15, I was playing Team Fortress 2 as just like a fun, casual game. And soon after, my friend gifted me Counter-Strike Global Offensive, and I just got hooked on ever since. And so I've been grinding up the ranks. And then a couple years after I started playing CSGO, I ended up purchasing ESCA, which is a third-party service that allows players to bring their game to the next level. And I participated in some leagues. I grinded up the ranks there as well. And soon afterwards, I got into UC Santa Cruz, and I had heard about the teams in the University of California system and how most of them are pretty good teams, and I wanted to get into that myself. Um, I didn't know which school I'd go into, but I ended up going to UC Santa Cruz, and from there I ended up joining the CS:GO team at first, and later on in the year there was an event called the Slug Gaming Expo, which is our annual event held on campus, which is a celebration of basically all the games that we host on campus, as well as like some student developed games for the game design major. And after that, I became the CS:GO director, and most recently, since the release of the Valorant closed beta, I ended up stepping up into the Valorant director role since Counter-Strike and Valorant are pretty similar games in their respective rights. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Great story there. And CSGO and Valorant are very similar, and we know there's a lot of hype with Valorant. I know it's probably been the number one stream game here for a little while since the closed beta came out about a month, 6 weeks ago, something like that. So, anyways, go into your role a little bit more. You're the director of CSGO and the Valorant teams. So in esports, I really like to emphasize that it's more than just playing, right? There are so many moving parts. There's so much support staff that's needed. Like yourself. So go into what you do specifically with the esports club at UC Santa Cruz.
Yeah, so as the CS:GO director, I've been most notable for hosting tryouts for our teams. Like this year, we usually have two teams that participate in the Collegiate Star League, which is one of the biggest leagues in the nation right now, as well as the North American Collegiate Counter-Strike League, which is actually student-run league hosted by some of the most notable alumni from the collegiate esports programs. Um, so we would host tryouts in the beginning of the year, which are held in like a in-house system, and from there we determine the teams based on that. And then throughout the year, we just host little events online, such as in-house events, basically like 10 mans, where we scrim against each other just for fun. Doesn't really have to be too try hard or anything. And then we also just like plan out events for the Slug Gaming Expo, which usually happens around April of each year. But
Hmm.
obviously, due to these circumstances, we couldn't host it this year.
Yeah, for sure. It is very unfortunate in the world right now with the current COVID-19 pandemic. Everybody out there, stay healthy. Definitely take care of yourself. Couple of questions going off of that. You compete in a really competitive area, like we touched on earlier, in that University of California system. There's so many great teams across a multitude of games. So, what level of, or describe to me a day of practice and training, right? What do you guys focus on? What areas of the game? Is it playing, scrimming, analyzing, VOD review, strategizing? Just take me through what that day looks like for our listeners out there that are wondering what that high level of competition looks like in the training mode at collegiate in the college.
So yeah, so we don't have too much support from the school system. First of all, it's kind of a thing that people assume that we get just because of
Hmm.
the high level that we're at. But I think for the most part, most of the UCs, other than UC Irvine and UC Berkeley, don't get too much of school support. Oh, and UC San Diego, they don't get too
Hmm.
much of school support when it comes to their collegiate teams. We're currently working on that right now, so that's kind of a disclaimer. But
Hmm.
for what we have right now, we a normal day of training just seems like it's just about an hour or so of just going over specific strategies that we theorize and think that could work in a game later on, and then we kind
Hmm.
of practice that a bit over and over um, until we think that we're okay with going into like a scrim against
Hmm.
another established team, or just go into like a pug in general and just try it out for fun and see if it works or not. And if we believe it works, then we just keep it. Um, when it comes to VOD review, I usually tell the players to do that on their own time because they have their own individual things to work on. And I
Hmm.
don't want to have to take up the actual practice time with the team in order to point out individual mistakes. Um,
For sure.
yeah.
Yeah, sounds like a great day right there. A couple of topics I want to expand on a little bit more is the importance of university dedicated support. Like you name dropped UCI in there, right? We all know they're one of the really, really big and massive sports programs in the entire nation from that collegiate perspective. So, speak to the importance from your perspective and your teams of what are the next steps in gaining some of that support and what it helps you with looking towards the future.
So yeah, so some of the next steps that we're taking right now. So currently we just got an agreement with the intramural program here at UC Santa Cruz to host intramural tournaments for esports in the fall quarter, since we don't know exactly what this current condition of our fall quarter will be, whether it will be hosted online just like this quarter, or it's going to be in person. Currently, I think that we are supposed to have like a mix between the two, where some
Hmm.
of the classes are online and some of them are in person based on how important they are to be in person. And so yeah, that's like our first step. We'd have tried to get in contact with them about potentially having our own esports center, but just because of construction and all the other shenanigans, like it's going to take quite a while before we get the ball rolling on that one.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully, since you're in the same system as UCI, that trickle down effect starts to begin, and maybe the entire system realizes, hey, esports is really massive. Let's get this in all of our schools. So hopefully, that's a hopeful positive right there for sure. Kind of backtracking a little bit, a couple of things that you said earlier that were really interesting was your Slugs Gaming event expo. I'm not exactly sure what that name was. That was the annual in April. Um, Sounds like you really bring in the esports competitive side of things and then the casual gaming where you're just having fun, sitting down, relaxing with your friends. Kind of speak to that divide that maybe exists a little bit in esports right now where a lot of people are like, whoa, what's professional esports? That's too competitive. And then just the having fun casual gaming and how at UC Santa Cruz that you're bringing both of them together to like be more, embracive and inclusive there.
Yeah, so our one of our mission statements for Slug Gaming, which is the official name for our esports club on campus, is that we're just trying to bring together both the casual side of gaming as well as the more competitive side together, so that people can kind of see both sides of the esports world or just the gaming world in general. So with the Slug Gaming Expo, we tend to make it so that there are tournaments of some sort. There are tournaments for our competitive players to partake in. So we'll usually have those on stage, and those are for people that really want to show off their talent and show off what they've been doing during their downtime. And then, as well as like the casual gamers, they have their side as well. We usually have tables laid out for people to bring their laptops to play on, or we have some setups that they can play on as well, like little laptop setups. We do have card games like Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic the Gathering that are also hosted at those tables. And then we also have like VR headset or VR sets that people can use to, try out the VR games. I think we also had a Smash tournament last time, which is held in partnership with our Smash club, which is
Hmm.
called, I believe it's, it's just our fight. It's just our FGC club.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then usually we'll have booths as well for other sponsors to come in, such as NVIDIA, such as Patriot, which sponsors our mice and keyboards. Um, so yeah, just like those kind of things, like everyone is just huddled into uh, one area, and we get to all experience that together.
Yeah, that's something that we're trying to actively do as well over here in Charlotte, where we're based out of, is really bring knowledge and awareness to like, hey, there's gaming, which is super fun, and there's esports, which is competitive, and the two should be kind of seen as in the same light. Obviously, differences there, but it's not. It shouldn't be exclusive, right? We should all come together to grow our industry together as we look towards the future. Speaking of the future, you mentioned earlier of the competitiveness of all the leagues you play in, right? Collegiate Star League, it's hyper competitive. So kind of looking towards the future, there's a lot of unknowns with like CSL and NACE and TESPA and all these organizations out there that are providing collegiate events and tournaments and leagues. What do you hope to see develop? You know, is it something like a singular entity comes about that unites all of collegiate esports, or kind of heading down the same path? So what do you hope to see in the future as collegiate esports continues to expand and grow?
Yeah, so I'm not hoping that everything becomes one because we've seen that in certain games where either developers or other leagues are trying to take over as the number one league and the only league in
Hmm.
the competitive ecosystem, which doesn't seem to work out as well. Um, for some players, it might be good because that way they can focus on one league, and I can see why it works. But for a marketing standpoint, I don't think it's necessarily the best. We've
Hmm.
seen that in like competitive Counter-Strike, where all these different tournament organizers are trying to become the number one and the only tournament organizer for players, and so they're trying to take over the scene by hosting more tournaments, which ends up causing more players to burn out faster. So I'm
Hmm.
hoping that for collegiate esports, that while there should be like um, a lot of leagues, I don't think that players should be like trying to fight over which leagues that they should be going into or which tournament organizers are fighting for um, which colleges go into their leagues per
Yeah,
se.
so kind of leaving it open and letting the players decide what's best for them, right? Because you said like mental burnout is massive in esports at any level right now. A lot of players getting that never-ending grind. They got to get better, and they never sit back. And then with all these leagues and tournaments that they can play on a daily basis, whether that's collegiately sponsored or just in that amateur scene, um, it's very readily easy to see where that burnout starts to occur. So one last question before we do wrap up here is kind of looking towards the future as well. What advice would you have for upcoming high school students, right? So high school students that they know they like gaming, they wake up every day and want to get better. What advice do you have for them to keep growing their skills and start to apply to colleges or even seek esports specific programs or clubs at that collegiate level?
Yeah, so I think just to start off, I think during my high school year, I know that I spent a lot of time gaming outside of schoolwork and swimming. So I would say like focus on those two, or focus on education first. That's like always the number one thing,
Hmm.
because that's how you're even going to make a foot into your college career, really.
Yeah.
Um, and then after that, if you have other extracurriculars outside of gaming, um, I would say like find prioritize based on what you think is best for you. So if you think that um, your other extracurriculars probably have more of an impact than gaming, then focus on those first.
Hmm.
Otherwise, if you're already going to like small tournaments, if you're already like placing like or top getting top placements at pretty big tournaments or even just like bigger online tournaments, such as like the Fortnite Championship Series or stuff like that. Like
Hmm.
obviously pursue that because I think that's already you're already at like one step ahead of most people in the gaming world. Um, but yeah, obviously set priorities and straight, and I think yeah, I think that should be it
Yeah.
really.
Yeah, for sure. Focusing on that balance, like you touched on, even touched on a little bit before that with the students in your club specifically, is making sure that you're focusing on all aspects of your life and not overemphasizing one. Because you said that leads to burnout, mental health issues, and overall just a lackluster quality of life there. If you're hyper focused on one thing, doesn't matter what it is, even if it's just hyper sleeping. It's too much anything always never ends up good. So real quick, we are wrapping up, running out of time. Raymond, tell us where we can find you, follow your teams at UC Santa Cruz, and where to go if we want to learn more about the Esports Club at UC Santa Cruz.
Yeah, so you could follow our socials at Slug Gaming UCSC on Twitter. You can also find us on Twitch, which is twitch.tv/Slug Esports. You can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/FrostyB_CS. And you can follow me on Twitch, which is twitch.tv/frosttv_TV.
Awesome, awesome. Everyone, if you're interested, definitely reach out to Raymond here. I know, speaking for everybody in the esports world, all of us want to see the industry and our scene grow, no matter what scene or game that is. We just want to see esports succeed and become the next big thing. It already is the next big thing, but cement itself as the big thing. So yeah, reach out. Never hesitate to ask questions. To everybody out there listening, thanks for joining us today in another talk about collegiate esports. Stay healthy and stay happy in the current pandemic. Make sure you take care of yourself and your loved ones, and ultimately, stay plugged in.